everyone. Welcome to the first. Yeah, I know. Welcome to the first ever production of the Mending Monologues at UCSD. So, by a show of hands, how many of you here are familiar with the Mending Monologues?
Woo!
Oh, for sure, for sure. Hey. How many of you here have no idea what you just walked into today? For sure. All right. So it's okay because honestly, neither did any of us at the beginning of this quarter. So I hope you are able to enjoy yourself. So the Mending Monologues provides a space for male-identifying people to take a stand against gender-based violence through the personal accounts of past and current menders alike. You'll notice the presence of scripts within our monologues, symbolizing that the stories we are telling may not be our own. Information about each piece can be found in the playbill, and by no means are these monologues all-inclusive. They're simply the stories and perspectives that we are comfortable sharing with you as it ties to our theme. Redefining the modern man. We cover a wide variety of topics, but it's important that we give the audience a fair warning that the content of the monologues can be sensitive and triggering to some. So if you ever feel the need to step out between pieces and practice some self-care, please feel free to do so. We are also joined by our wonderful partners, Carrot Sark, San Diego Center for Community Solutions, and the UCSD Women's Center, who can provide you support and resources during intermission and after the show. The Mending Monologues is a safe space and a brave space. What you hear tonight are personal narratives that we hope will encourage healthy, necessary conversations, and we encourage you to listen with an open mind and allow yourself to be challenged. Now, finally, if you feel the voice of the performer send shivers down your spine or the words you're hearing pluck at your heartstrings, there are ways for you to express yourself in the moment and affirm the performer on stage. If you feeling yourself in this space, send us some snaps. Some sparkles? Silent applause? Or however you want to affirm the performer on stage, whatever that looks like to you, but make sure it's appropriate and you're not disturbing the experience for anybody else. We want to say thank you to Mom and Justin Glover, our community partners, and for you all for being here with us today. Without further ado, let us begin.
When I was a kid, I often wondered if I was gay. I mean, I loved makeup, tutus, and musical theater. I really didn't like boys, though. Not just sexually, I mean, I really couldn't stand being around them. I really hated men. It may have had something to do with being raised by an overbearing feminist mother, but probably had more to do with the bullying. I definitely wasn't the kind of kid who could just man up. I really wanted to do and be everything that is a woman. It's just that I also wanted to do women. It's not like I didn't come by it, honestly. When my mom first met my dad, he was wearing a dress. Actually, sorry, but on him it looked like a dress, especially because it was pink. He still likes masculine activities. I mean, he does blacksmithing on a forge he built himself. Total primeval man stuff. It's just that in temperament, he's basically a 50s housewife. Yes, dear, whatever you say. It's a pretty simple sequence of events that leads to me, the only boy in beginning jazz dance at age 10. I wish I could say I was welcomed with open arms. Burgeoning adolescent lust combined with confused gender identity didn't lend itself to being surrounded by the opposite sex. I remember a musical theater production I was in at a young age, which involved a dance sequence with a group of cheerleaders. Everyone in the ensemble, myself included, learned the dance. And when it came time to perform, I remember one of the girls saying,
"Boys aren't allowed in this number."
Of course, it wasn't until that moment that I noticed none of the other boys were lined up to do the dance. I didn't know which was worse, not getting to do the dance or losing face in front of every single girl in the cast. I didn't have to wonder for long, though, because my passion for the dance led to the director adding me to the number. It would have felt like shameful punishment if it wasn't such fun. The girls could be harsh, but they were a lot better than the boys. One time, I tried out my brother's activity of choice, judo. It's a martial art that is actually a lot like dance. The interplay of weight between partners, it was actually something I could get into. Only when it comes to the actual fight of it, I just go with the flow and end up on the floor. Many of the kids actually had more fun sparring with me because I liked the dance of it. However, there were the macho men teaching the class that saw me doing judo wrong and took it on themselves to force me to man up and fight back. The violence in their intent crushed me in indescribable ways. For a long time, I grew up antagonizing these masculine forces. They were always at odds with who I was and what I wanted to be. I was never tough enough, strong enough, man enough. Men and women alike judged me for who I was. And being as emotionally sensitive as I was, every judgment hurt me at my core. It wasn't until more recently that I realized how much this version of masculinity shaped my own male identity. Because I was a man, all these things I perceived as evil were present in me too. The need to control and dominate and react with force, all of these are intrinsic to the male psyche. I had suffered at the hands of people who have indulged in those qualities and perverted them. For a long time, I wouldn't let myself feel control or dominance over another. I couldn't let myself hurt someone like I'd been hurt. But just as I can't deny that I am a singing, dancing, musical man, I can't deny that I'm a man. I needed the thrill of the chase, the power of agency, the daring of a challenge, and the strength of passion. So much of these needs had been corrupted, in my eyes, by our patriarchal society, a society where boys are taught to hate instead of love. I needed to embrace my masculinity, not just so I can be whole as a human being, but because we can't live in a world where everything that is born of masculine energy is a damaging force. Instead of joining the ranks of hateful men in the world, I could become something much more. There are men who don't just have control over others, but control over themselves. There are men who can listen and receive just as well as they can take action. There are men who don't just command, but lead. There are men who don't just lead, but can turn that leadership over to another. There are men who don't ask what the world owes them for being a man, but instead ask what they can do for the world as a man. There are men who know the love of a woman is not something that can be won, bought, or taken because she is not a prize, not a commodity, and most definitely not something that can be owned. There are men who know that a world that objectifies women is a world that will allow violence toward women. There are men who will do whatever it takes to end that violence. So I'm going to man up and be one of those men. Because when there are more of those men, we can love all these men. And when we men learn to turn hate into love, that is how we begin mending.
So in this dream, I walk into a doctor's office, and I'm changing pleasantries with the medical system. He's a nice guy, 40s, Pacific Islander. He says, I'm okay. If I could just get my daughter to come home sober after the concert, especially when she's driving. And I didn't know what to say to that. So I pick up the brochure, points to it and say, sorry man, like nothing happens. And then there's this woman there, and the one with the sunglasses and short hair says,
Nice. So 2 girls in a car means drugs to you?
this gives me pause. The woman around her looking at me accusingly, and I feel actual fear. I'm keenly aware that in this moment my size might be threatening. So I sit down and look in the eyes and say, you're right, that was insensitive. She doesn't remove her sunglasses, but she smirks.
Damn right.
And she looks around knowingly at the other woman, jerks her head in my direction, and all the woman agreed to something about me that I could only understand viscerally. This pisses me off. I think of statistics the number cited, and she takes off her sunglasses and glares at me.
What? Man?
I say, well, I was gonna say something factual, but I can see that you won't listen. And I sit back down. I'm afraid of this woman and her power. A power she gets from stealing mine. And this makes me angry. She and another woman laugh, and just on my angry eyes meets hers, I wake up. And then I get all ghetto in the dark. Yo, don't be waking me up to avoid a conversation, yo. What a man with a kid with dumb things. I didn't mean anything specific. How was supposed to know the two girls in the cars anyhow? He didn't say it. I'm on the defensive again. But she didn't hear me because your fear never listens to you right after they wake you up. You have to chase them down fierce and unwavering so they pay attention. I apologized to them instead of trying to explain what I really meant. I was afraid she wouldn't let me explain. I was afraid what she'd say to me if she understood. I was afraid she already decided that neither my words nor their meaning were of value. Because my meaning was wrong. Because my words were wrong. Because I'm wrong. Because I'm a man. At this moment, sitting in the living room 6 in the morning, my computer in my lap, feeling disempowered by a pigment of my own imagination. Carl Jung must be jitterbugging his grave. And then I realized that this must be how many women feel all the time, frozen, unable to speak their truth of fear that their words may really twisted and jammed back down their throats. Usually by men. I can see how eventually women might be conditioned to apologize to the front, to assume that anyone in power or disapprove anything she had to say. I can see how she had to swallow her pride before she opened her mouth, even when she knows she's right. Because it doesn't matter what she does. She doesn't get its side if it's reasonable, if it's right, or if it's important. I can see how women are bombarded with idiocy day in and day out on social media, in the press, in television, movies, in music, magazines, at work. I can see how this might piss women off. I've reached a conclusion for myself. I won't tell any woman what she should do. That's for her to decide. Not me. But here it is. I'm done apologizing to anyone who's projecting their fear and prejudice onto me. I'm done apologizing to people who think that any woman, ever, was just asking for it. I'm done apologizing to people who suggest the best way to end violence against a woman is to give every woman a gun. I'm done apologizing to people who suggest that to think women's health care issues are only important if they involve her uterus after she conceives. I'm done apologizing to people to feel it's their obligation to tell me that I'm not right with their God because I believe in a woman's right to choose. I'm done apologizing to anyone who has ever said, boys will be boys. Because that shit let men think they don't have to be accountable for their actions. That's right. I'm done apologizing to people who try to paint me with their stupid. I'm done apologizing for my truth.
If any of you have been to this show before, you know that it can be a little emotional. So to give you a chance to breathe and wipe away the tears, we break out a humorous piece featuring a gaggle of fabulous gay guys. In the piece, the gays recount a time when a V-Day warrior attempted to sell them a t-shirt that says, "I heart vagina." The gays then proceed to tell us how while they do not want to have anything to do with hearting the literal vagina, they can get behind, no pun intended, supporting the theoretical vagina. As expected, hilarity ensues, and we break up the tension with some much-needed laughter. Thanks, gays! In the year that I've been part of this movement and a performer in this show, I've always wanted to be in that piece. I've always wanted to be the one to make the audience laugh with a smart cultural reference. To take faces that were frowning just a moment earlier and turn them upside down with a timely, flamboyant gesture. to proclaim my support for nonviolence with a sachet and a snap A to Z. I wanted to light up the room so badly. I've never been cast in that piece. Perhaps it was because my voice was needed for another story, or that I wrote something else more compelling that needed to be told. For one reason or another, it was not meant to be. I sat in the background on stage, watching my brothers bring smiles to crying faces, and I grew envious of them. I was always supportive and always gave them their due, because they rocked it out every time. But secretly, I wanted to be the one to lighten the mood. I wanted it to be me up there. I wanted to be one of the funny gays, because I am. I'm definitely funny, and I'm gay. It has taken me a long time to be okay with saying those words, I am gay. There's so much about coming out that can be said, but what is most certainly true about it all is that it is a process. First, you have to come out to yourself. You have to be willing to take the leap forward toward a more authentic life by acknowledging that moment when you knew you were different. Then, you have to come out to the world. Because the only way you're going to get that more authentic life is by living it fiercely, without hiding, without worrying about being found out, but most of all, without fear. Fear. Fear is what has been keeping me from being my most authentic self. Fear is what has been keeping me from telling my parents my full truth. It's an interesting experience being out to the rest of the world, but not to the two people who you know really love you. It's like being at a crowded party, and in the middle of the room is a glass box, and I'm able to see and interact and have fun with everyone, but I can't leave the box. And I want to leave, because life is outside of the box, and love is outside of the box. And the only way to have any of that is to leave the box, to shatter it and break it into a million little pieces. Only then will I be free. But the only way to break through, to have my authentic life, to join my friends at the party, is to tell my parents the truth. Suddenly, the glass box is not a symbol of oppression. It becomes much more. It's the whole history of family. It's my mother's faith, it's my father's pride, it's the family they wish for me, it's our love for each other, it's our home. To tell my truth would mean shattering all we've ever known into a million little pieces. And for a while, I justified not telling them by saying that it would protect them from the shards of my secrets. But all it is fear. Fear of disappointing my family, fear that I am not enough, fear of being the one responsible for crushing their dreams, fear that I will not be loved for who I am as I am. Fear is what has kept me from sharing my story with you. Every year, the men and women of this movement are challenged to tell their stories, to be vulnerable, to be real, to be honest, to hold space for each other. And every year, I show up for them, but not for myself. I've been carrying an overwhelming sense of shame about this. I haven't been authentic, and I'm sorry for that. In the context of this movement, I didn't think my story was that important to tell. We are here to speak out against violence, and my struggle in the closet pales in comparison with the experience of survivors of abuse, the brave men and women I call my friends. I didn't want to be insensitive. It is twice now that I've been present in the room when a survivor finally speaks their full truth out loud for the first time. I saw how difficult it was for the words to come through, shaking and in tears. I watched how the weight of years of despair was lifted off of their shoulders. Their story was no longer a burden to bear alone, and we surrounded them with love and light. What those experiences have taught me is that by not being authentic with my struggle, I am in fact not honoring theirs. And in a way, my survivor friends and I are both living in glass boxes. Theirs is a box created by violence and imposed upon them by an abuse. Mine is one created by a culture of homophobia and intolerance. We interact with the party, but are kept from fully enjoying it because we are trapped in by fear. I've let the fear rule my life for a very long time. I want to be one of the funny gays, but that's not my part to play. It's time for me to be vulnerable, to be real, to be honest, and to hold space for my truth. I will continue to do the work. When the time is right, I will tell my parents, and they will finally see all of me. And to the survivors, the amazing men and women, my friends, thank you. Thank you for sharing your hearts and inspiring me to be the most true and authentic version of myself. You give me courage. I will continue to show up, to be the shoulder and the warm hug when you need it. And together, we will shatter these glass boxes into a million pieces.
Hey y'all, I'm David. I wrote this. So, I'm on a mission, y'all. I'm on a mission to deconstruct the toxic standards by redefining misconceptions and defining my own experiences. Allow me to elucidate. I am Black, I am Mexican, I'm a Christian, I'm queer, I'm a brother, I'm from Fresno, California, and I'm a college student. Now, one of these identities I would have never imagined myself saying in front of a crowd of people. No, it's not that I'm from Fresno, California. It's that I'm a queer person, specifically a queer person of color. Queer, defined by Merriam-Webster Dictionary as differing in some odd way from what is usual or normal. I'm proud of that now. In my childhood, however, I would have never imagined that word being a part of my identity, but I would soon become all too familiar with it. Now, looking back to my younger days, I have the privilege of saying that I had a beautiful childhood. My parents, both coming from impoverished households, sought to make the lives of their children beautiful. They showed me unending love and taught me to be appreciative for every little thing I had. Life felt like an adventure, limitless possibilities. I never wanted to grow up. I wanted to be like Peter Pan. Of course, couldn't be that way forever. Starting in middle school, as it usually does, I began to change. This was the point that I began realizing I was gay, and I had just moved schools away from all of my close friends. When I first came to this realization, it terrified me. Growing up in a Christian household and learning of teachings that depicted homosexuality as an unforgivable sin that would bar one from the gates of heaven, I feared being gay. I feared being ostracized, being alone, and being condemned. To me, being gay meant living both a life and an afterlife full of suffering. Anxiety, defined as apprehensive uneasiness or nervousness, usually over an impending or anticipated ill. Overwhelmed with anxiety, I tried brainwashing myself to think otherwise, convinced myself it was some strange phase that would eventually pass. And yet, as I grew older, so did my desires grow stronger. I wanted companionship, someone to share my world with. I found myself experiencing the strange dichotomy between my desire to love and be loved and my desire to conform. Loneliness, defined as destitute of sympathetic or friendly companionship. Loneliness would strike me down during these years. I stuck out like a sore thumb in a lot of my high school social cliques. I mean, granted, I was a weird as hell kid, but still, I was enigmatic. To them, I was the other. I was kind of flamboyant, I spoke differently, I had no interest in dating girls, and I was seen as a teacher's pet. I mean, literally, I was voted as teacher's pet in the senior school yearbook. Now, don't get me wrong, I had a lot of fun days full of laughter in high school, but I was also one of the easiest to be picked on. Faggot, defined as offensive, used as an insulting and contemptuous term for a male homosexual. The word faggot was something that I became all too familiar with and even expected from time to time. I'll never forget being trash canned, having my phone stolen, having crude jokes made about me, even on my graduation day. For them, it was all fun and games, but I always took it personal and I hated it. I hated being expected to be okay with all the stupid shit people had to say about me. I felt angry and alone when I sought someone or something to relate these experiences to. So, I turned towards the media. Yay. Having such little exposure to queerness, my main source of queer representation was through the piece of shit we call our media, mainstream media. Now, I'm sure that might sound a little harsh to some, but allow me to elucidate as to why I feel that way. Almost all of the queer figures I saw were white males with European features, chiseled bodies, straight fluffy styled hair. I mean, what the fuck? Do I look like? Not only did that set an unrealistic beauty standard for me and the millions of other queer folks who watched, but it also perpetuated an idea that you couldn't be queer and a person of color, and if you were, you weren't beautiful enough for the public gaze. Now, seeing those men comparing their features to me made me feel ugly. For that reason, I did not like the way I looked. For years, I would wish that I could also be beautiful, not realizing that true beauty came from within. It's how you persevere, how you fight, how you love. Since realizing this, I've come to embrace my natural appearance. I think my curly hair, dark skin, and brown eyes are beautiful in their own way. Now, that's not to say I think I'm a fucking supermodel, but I do love myself. In that regard, I took the definition of beauty into my own hands, but it would be years before I got to that point of loving myself. Depression, defined as a mood disorder marked by feelings of dejection and hopelessness, inactivity, difficulty in thinking, and sometimes suicidal tendencies. For years, I had internalized feelings of homophobia, anxiety, rage, not opening up because I worried I would no longer be seen as the friendly, enthusiastic David others had known me to be. So I fell into a deep, heavy depression. I've come a long way since then, but I'm still in the process of healing myself mentally. Exhausted with having to lie to myself and others, I eventually came to accept myself both internally and externally. Now, finally, the part you've probably been waiting for, the part where I finally came out. At the age of 19, I finally decided it was time. So I made this whole elaborate plan of who, when, where, and how. I determined I would come out to my family individually and personally before anyone else, all at the start of the new year, 2016. And so I did. And it turns out I didn't even have to destroy myself internally about this. My family was incredibly supportive, and I was very surprised when I told them. They're just like, oh, okay. Kind of suspected it, but okay. It was incredibly nerve-wracking and one of the most difficult things that I've ever done. But you know, the sad thing is that it had to be such a big deal in the first place. In the end, I was so privileged to have a safe, loving coming out experience, but I know far too many folks who have suffered or fear suffering hostility, abuse, disownment, violence, and outright hatred from someone who's supposed to love them unconditionally. For any folks that are going through that process or have yet to, I hope that you can also get to experience this because we all deserve that freedom, that healing. Now, part of that healing has been learning to express my emotions and realizing they're valid. I'd be lying if I said I never cry. Last year, in fact, I cried for the first time in a long time. Truly cried. I didn't hold back. I was at a moment in my life where I felt very alone, hopeless, and discontent with my performance here at the university. So I cried. The moment was the catharsis for all this built-up emotion, so I cried, and it felt amazing. To all the men, or anyone in general, who thinks that crying is weakness, I beg to differ. Crying may be a state of vulnerability, perhaps, but not weakness. No, I'd say crying can be defined as a state of empowerment. Expressing yourself candidly without reserve is powerful. So I encourage you to cry. Don't keep it all in. Talk to someone. Talk to me. I'll be here after the show, so if you really want to talk about something and don't know who to talk to, you can talk to me. I'll be glad to hear you out, and I truly do mean that. Now, my final message to everyone, and especially my fellow folks of color, queer folks, or both, take care of yourself. Love yourself. Since coming out, I've come to realize that self-care is one of the most underrated skills for one to put into practice. Self-care meaning knowing your limits and taking a step back from the horrors of society to just breathe. Remembering good memories and smiling, knowing that there is good in the world. It means truly loving yourself and learning to say, you know what? I am enough. My successes are enough. Me being here is enough. And not worrying about people judging you or making assumptions about you. Accept you for who you are. That's the first step in defining you. Thank you.
clear on a few things. My cousin Kenny, who is 2 years older than me, and whom I adored until that weekend, came to visit the summer I turned 14. His father and our grandmother were visiting too, so Kenny and I had to share my bed. We whispered for a long time that night, lying together in our tidy-whities amid the pale, glowing rectangles from the street lamp outside my window. Sometime after the house got quiet, Kenny talked me into taking off my underwear. And then he raped me. Over the last years, I've gotten pretty comfortable saying that I was raped. I've been trying to write about it. It's not easy. I want to tell the story, to relay the conversation that we had, but there are gaps. For instance, I can tell you that he penetrated me, but not whether he used his penis or his finger. I honestly do not remember. And I don't think it matters much, because rape, as it's defined in federal law, is the penetration, no matter how slight, of the vagina or anus with any part of the body or object, or oral penetration by a sex organ of another person without the consent of the victim. So if you're thinking, well, maybe it was just his finger and that's not really rape, you're wrong, because yeah, it really was. The issue of consent has troubled me since that evening. You see, I allowed it to happen. If I had reported it, no one would ever have asked me about consent. It was a few days before my 14th birthday. I was not old enough to give my consent. But before the jury that exists in my mind, where justice is far from blind, I am as culpable as my alleged rapist. You see, when Kenny was ready to put himself inside of me, he asked me if he could. And I said yes. Why did I do that? That's the $64,000 question right there, and one that I've struggled to answer for the last 39 years. As a writer, I knew that the answer could be found in what was said during that conversation. If I could just remember it, word for word, I thought I might be able to approach it from outside, as if Kenny and Kurt were simply two characters in a scene that takes place in a boy's bedroom during the last hour or so before the defining moment in this boy's life. I tried to write that scene several times. Mostly I just stared at an empty page. Whenever I did, I get something on the page, it felt like fiction. One thing I do remember with perfect clarity was after he looked at my anus and told me that it was brown, he said, "Mine is pink. Yours is brown because you don't keep yourself clean. You're disgusting." And I remember wondering if that was true. I thought I had been doing a good job of keeping myself clean, but maybe I wasn't, and maybe I should try to do a better job, and maybe he was right, and maybe he was right in that I am dirty, and maybe he was right in that I am disgusting, and maybe he was right. Maybe I am disgusting. Maybe I am. As if that wasn't enough to destroy a 13-year-old boy, my rapist whispered the 6 words that I remember with perfect clarity. Ones that I have heard whispered in my head when I am alone, ones that I have heard whispered in my head every time I'm attracted to a woman. No woman will ever want you. In the stuffy darkness of a July night, illuminated only by a street lamp and the newfound awareness that I am disgusting and undesirable, my rapist offered himself to me as my savior. Can I put myself inside you? He asked. Yes, because in this moment, I need someone to touch me. Because that touch means that to one person, at least, I am not completely unwanted and unwantable. That's why it doesn't matter whether he put his finger or his penis inside me. Sure, physical penetration is what makes the legal definition of rape. But the real rape is what he did inside my head.
Tonight, I'm gonna tell you all about my sex life. This'll take about 7 minutes if I go slow. 2 years ago, I broke up with my girlfriend. We were together for almost 7 years, and I loved her very much. Sex wasn't ever a problem for us. In fact, it was probably one of the only things that kept us together for so long. But ultimately, our relationship wasn't sustainable. We broke up. Her first rebound after we broke up was with some guy who was a tantric master. He takes her to heights of sexual ecstasy. How do I know this? Well, my ex and I get together for a sleepover, and I'll tell you, she's a completely changed woman. And I asked her, what's happened to you? And she says,
Tantra, did you know that the vulva can be stimulated in 10 different directions?
No, I didn't know that. As funny as that is now, at the time, I was crushed because I wanted to be the one who opened her up that way, not some guy she had just met. After that, my sexual confidence just cratered. That was the first time Tantra kicked my ass, but it wouldn't be the last. And men, you may want to listen up too, because Tantra may be looking to kick your ass too.
So, a few months later, I meet this beautiful flight attendant from Seattle. She actually hits on me and asks me out to dinner. We date for about a month, and let's just say, my confidence gets restored. Then, she invites me to take a week-long Tantra course with her in Hawaii, but here's the catch. She needs a commitment first. I tell her the truth. I just broke up with someone who I was with for 7 years. I can't rush into another relationship. She says,
Fine, I'll take the class myself.
well, she's not by herself for very long. At her class, she meets a fellow student and they practice Tantra on each other for like 5 days straight. I innocently call her up and ask, how is your Tantra class going, honey? She says,
Exalted. The best sex I had ever had. I met a German man named Hogart. I'm moving to New Zealand with him. I'll never go back to having sex the old way again. Did you know that the vulva can be stimulated in 10 different directions?
Yeah, I think I heard that somewhere. Tantra kicks my ass for a second time.
A couple of months go by, and I met this really charming woman at a seminar. We go out on a date, and she tells me she's an intimacy coach. She actually teaches Tantra. In fact, she goes to India and takes month-long courses on Tantra. And I'll tell you, for the first time in my life, I'm on a date with a beautiful woman, and I'm actually afraid I might have sex. I was afraid we'd be in the bed, and she'd say something like,
Did you know that the vulva can be stimulated in 10 different cosmic dimensions?
But we didn't go there. We actually ended up being really good friends. I'm a slow learner, but I finally figured it out. The universe is trying to tell me something. So, I started reading books on Tantra. I took Tantra classes, did this so I could technically be better at sex, and Tantra definitely helps with that. But there's all this other stuff about
Breathing.
and energy.
And God. God. Maybe that was part of my problem.
I never really brought God into the bedroom before.
Unless it was.
Oh God! Oh God!
Oh God! While making my goofy face.
By the way, that was the upper middle class nerd mode.
Pretty much the only one I know. Alright, back to God. So, for most of my life, I had this concept of God as pissed off old grandpa, but over time, this changed into a loving, accepting kind of God. A groovy kind of God like Bob Marley. Except in the bedroom. There, God was still a pissed off old grandpa, and everybody knows that there's nothing sexy about pissed off old grandpas in the bedroom. No offense, sir.
But seriously, after reading these books on Tantra and experimenting with the energy, I'm starting to see sex and relationships in a whole new way.
Tantra is about connecting and achieving union. Sexual energy is just an access point to that. It's not just treating her like a goddess, it's loving her as the goddess with a capital G. In Tantra, they even have these names of reverence for the genitals. The penis is called the jade shaft and the scepter of light. Isn't that so much nicer than pecker, prick, or dick?
The vagina is called the precious gateway, the golden doorway, and the flower heart. Isn't that cool? The name for the clitoris is the jewel in the crown.
Then I had a serious revelation. Are you ready? There's actually a point to this story. Here it is. I believe that part of this problem of violence towards women stems from how we raise our children to think about sex. And it goes far beyond the words we use to call our privates.
As a boy growing up, I had no enlightened role models around sex.
Who does?
Our culture has a lot of shall nots around sex, but not very many shall do's. We don't have giant stone statues of gods and goddesses and divine beings getting it on like they do in India. Instead, we have my mom saying things like,
Sex is dirty before marriage, and it's sacred after marriage, so keep your pecker and your prance until you're married. End of story.
as a culture, we teach that sex is dirty, profane, and degrading. So is it any wonder that we have generation after generation of boys that grow up to be men who gravitate towards sexual images that are dirty, profane, and degrading towards women?
What if we taught boys that sex was sacred?
What if at puberty we had a sacred ceremony or a rite of passage where a mentor or a father told his son something like this?
Son, that stirring inside of you is your masculine energy awakening within you. That desire to procreate is also the desire to create, to learn, to love, to build your body, to dominate in sport, to lead, to achieve. Those aren't desires to be denied, but nothing short of the masculine side of God awakening within you, as you, and through you. And son, one day you will meet your opposite and your complement. And she will test you in ways you can't even imagine. But if you're able to stay open to her, then the rewards will be bountiful beyond measure.
I never heard that speech growing up. But I think if I had, it would have cleared a lot of my confusion about being a man. And it would have saved me and the women in my life a lot of hurt and ache.
I believe that if boys believe that sex was sacred, then they wouldn't grow up to be men who use sex as a weapon against women or themselves. And like I said at the beginning, it seemed like Tantra is trying to kick my ass.
Now, I see that Tantra was just waking my ass up.
I still have a long ways to go, but
Thank God I'm awake.
I'm Ricky, and I also wrote this. So I'm like 4 months into my first actual real life relationship, and it's scary shit. I find myself comparing us to my parents too, for some reason, and I never thought I'd be taking this whole Oedipus complex thing to heart, and I love the Doors. But she has the same, her name is the same name as my mom and my grandma's middle name, and I have her uncle and her cousin's first name, and it's so weird. And not that I'm implying that I'm really that actually ready for her to meet my family or anything, but I mean, we're gonna do it anyway. But it's gotten me to sort of rethink how I even view my family, how I even thought of the one relationship that I saw unfold growing up, the standard bearer, my parents. I've been finding myself thinking about this one particular hotel room. Now, it's not the kind of hotel room that you're probably thinking of. It's not the Holiday Inn Express, and you wouldn't see a washed-up William Shatner trying to sell you this place on a Priceline Negotiator commercial. I'd say it's more along the Breaking Bad montage, everyone knows it's Wendy side of the hotel room spectrum. I first checked into what was called the Roadway Inn on June 11th of 2004, room 115. I had the bed closest to the door and the air conditioner. I've always had a strange relationship with hotels. At 23 years old, I've probably stayed at over 40 of them, and maybe not for the reasons you might hear from somebody who's been in student government. I am an only child, and my parents are addicts. I think that sums it up. Now, I could say that pretty calmly these days, and calmer still, given all the scholarships that I've won because of it. But it wasn't really something that I understood growing up. I didn't know what it meant when I kept hearing my dad drunk, screaming the word tweaker at my mom at the random hours of the night that they decided to have a fight. I would sit around in silence and wonder what exactly the shit was that she kept sticking up her nose. Why she would stay up until 4 a.m. on our old Windows 98 playing solitaire. Or why my uncles put my dad's face through a glass table for hitting her when I was 6 years old. Or why I had to call the cops when he got her in a chokehold when I was 8. Or why he punched her teeth out and went to jail when I was 10. I don't understand why they did a lot of what they did. And a little known fact about me, outside of those scholarship essays, I guess, was that I never got to go to elementary school. I just never went. They never enrolled me. I'd like to think that somewhere between like the Columbine shooting and 9/11, my mom had an actual real life reason to be paranoid, but really she was just scared the school admin would see her meth teeth. On paper, to this day, the records say that I was homeschooled. But in reality, that essentially meant just me laying around playing PlayStation 2 and listening to my mom lecture me about what she learned on Coast to Coast AM or Alex Jones the previous night. I mean, at first it was pretty cool. Like, I didn't have to go to school. But eventually it got pretty lonely. I didn't have any friends. Not when we lived in a house in Imperial Beach, and not when I walked the streets with my mom after my dad went to jail. So I used to talk to myself. I'd go play in the parking lot and hit sticks against pillars, pretending that they were lightsabers, make-believe filmmaking in my head, referring to myself as we when I spoke aloud. And I'm not sure I could have kept any friends around anyway. After my dad got locked up, we got evicted and had nowhere to go. My mom and I bounced around different places. Motel 6, Travel Lodge, Days Inn, the living room of the security guard from Days Inn, the living room of a house with a for sale sign on it, the living room of my grandma's apartment before she tried kicking my mom out for doing drugs. "You're not taking my son," she said. We stayed in 3 different rooms in Big 7 Motel that year on the streets, and I guess at the time it didn't occur to me that we were basically homeless. I was homeless at 10 years old, getting by only through money my mom was making bartending and, looking back, what I can now recognize as prostituting. I still remember the series of guys who took us out to eat that year, chatting me up about video games while eyeing my mom up and down. Malachi, Scott, Mike, Thomas, John. We didn't get food stamps because my mom was scared the county would take me away. I thought it would be over when my dad got out of work furlough. He served a year for domestic violence and got to keep his construction job. But instead, we found our new home in what would later be called Best Choice Inn. I ended up beginning this whole educational journey thing in the last 3 months of 6th grade, and stayed at the Worst Choice Inn all the way until I graduated high school. I went through puberty in a motel room, 3 feet away from my parents. I never really understood how to do the whole social interaction thing. I didn't understand the norms of what was right or wrong to say in social situations. I mean, if some neighbor hadn't called Child Protective Services when I was 11, and I suspect it was one of the hotel maids, I probably wouldn't even be able to read this script today. But talking to girls, talking to people, I was so awkward from being isolated for so long, I couldn't find anything to talk about outside of like Star Wars and video games. With so much social anxiety, I grew withdrawn. In 8th grade, I discovered rock music. I became obsessed with Pink Floyd, and I'd walk around school with my earbuds on. Listening to The Wall helped me cope with what became thoughts of suicide. I so badly wanted to be liked that I chased birds to get attention. Like, I chased birds. Like, Chula Vista Middle had like a seagull problem, and I just went for it. And eventually, I got dubbed the Birdman by bullying kids years before Michael Keaton. And in fact, I could still kind of do like a half-assed post-puberty bird call for you all if you're interested in hearing it. Oh, rusty, but I'll take it. But it didn't help. It really didn't. No girls talk to me. And really, I wanted attention. I so much to hug a girl, and I thought they all wanted to hear the same kind of put-downs and sarcastic remarks that were a staple of my dad's romantic game. And it didn't help that I saw so much of myself in him. He introduced me to good music, he watched Charger games with me, he watched the news with me, he introduced me to socialism and Bernie Sanders way back in 2009, and I felt like such a hipster during this last election year. and the worst part is, I'm still scared I'm going to become him. I remember the moment I first discovered masturbation. It was sometime around when Anna Nicole Smith died. Don't tell me how I remember that. And I had saved Mr. Skin's screenshots of Angelina Jolie and Taking Lives saved on my PSP. And it was between that and a Brooke Burke interview for Need for Speed Underground in the November 2006 issue of Electronic Gaming Monthly. But I digress. I remember not knowing what this white foam was that I kept peeing out in the shower, but I kept doing it. This is how I spent the next 7 years of my life. I remember the night I first woke up to hear my parents having sex. I was having a dream that the 7-Eleven next door was getting robbed. And somebody had fired a gun through a glass window over there a couple of weeks prior, and I kind of dug the excitement. And it was not, in fact, my dad's heavy breathing I was hearing, but that of the cashier Bianca banging on our hotel room door right next to my bed, right up until I heard that familiar Tantra, oh God, and woke up to the bed squeaking, and it was my dad. I've never really dreamt the same way again. I continue to wake up mumbling what's going on to make sure my parents know that I'm awake, even though I haven't lived with them in 6 years. I remember the morning I first woke up to my dad masturbating across the room to porn on my laptop. My giant brick-sized E-Machines computer they bought me for $199 at Best Buy. He used Google Chrome, and I'd find all of the she-male fetish videos in my download folder months later. And one time, pretending that I was asleep, I glanced over to see him putting a towel down on the carpet. And a part of me kind of thought he was an amateur for not using toilet paper. And I remember not living up to his standards of masculinity. At a time when I was insecure about my acne and was bullied for wearing the same pair of Walmart Wranglers every day, my dad would come home from the bar and call me Skippy and Fairy for being into theater and choir. I remember coming home once to meet one of his old construction buddies, and he was like, "Damn, how tall are you? Dude, you must be a star on the basketball team, huh?" I don't talk to my parents much anymore. I went to community college, and they live in the truck my dad got right before getting laid off during the recession. I called my mom for Mother's Day last month. She's trapped in a codependent relationship, a victim of gender-based violence after all these years. They adopted a cat off the street and stay on and off at the Travel Inn, and I still love them. I lost my virginity in a hotel room. It was at the Liaison Hotel in Washington, D.C. I was there for a student government conference for community colleges called ASAC. She was from Oxnard. She was cool. We connected over like politics and Fight Club. And the second night I met her, we threw a party, filling the bathtub up with ice and beer. And when everybody left, my roommate Chris was on the other bed passed out. And I thought of my parents having sex with me in the room. but I went for it anyway. But I couldn't find our one condom, the ASAC Jimmy hat, as Chris called it. So I had to wait until the next night, and I felt all the better for it. And I tried to do it all over again at a conference in LA a couple of months later. We threw another hotel party, and once again my boy Chris passed out 3 feet away. But this time the girl ended up passing out too. And when she mumbled to me asking me for a condom, I knew that I could have went for it, but I didn't. I stayed awake, scared of carrying the bloodline of gender-based violence I know that I carry with me. I also carry a lot of guilt. This story is the reason that I'm the commencement speaker this year. You know, and just this morning, I got a call from the Union Tribune and did an interview for a story that just dropped 2 hours before I gave this performance tonight. And every day, I think about how much I've secretly gamed the system by exploiting my background for personal gain here at UCSD. I think about my mom in that hotel room, trapped in a situation that she's blind to. And I think about how they're gonna react in 2 weeks when I share, in thinly veiled terms, how much the cycle of abuse and their relationship has molded me into who I am today. And I watch them devolve as human beings before my eyes, and it haunts me. I don't like hotels, suffice to say. They're a little too expensive and bourgeoisie for my taste anyway. Like, I'd rather just sleep in my car and pitch a tent on the beach. In fact, that'd probably be like a way cooler date night anyway. You know, and I could say the word we while actually having a friend beside me. Or a girlfriend, because yesterday she called me out for not labeling her in my performance. I'm not sure if these internalized scars I still carry with me have been good or bad for that relationship, but I'll be damned if I want some fucking hotel room to remind me of them all over again. Thank you.
Hello again. We want to thank you for going on this journey with us so far, but we're only halfway through.
So we are going to take a 10-minute intermission.
Hello, it's me. If this next piece offends you, get the fuck over it. Penn State, Beta Theta Pi. Dry house, strict no alcohol policy. Fraternity pledge manual bans the possession, consumption, and abusing of alcohol during fraternity-related events, and forbids drinking games, providing alcohol to minors, and allowing alcohol at initiation ceremonies. Also prohibits hazing, and even includes the sentence, permission or approval by a person being hazed is not a defense. All these and more were included as part of the fraternity's risk management policy. Cool, yeah, that's all good, except the person who's writing and enforcing these rules just happens to be the head of the social committee, which shoulders the responsibility of obtaining alcohol. Timothy Piazza, from Lebanon, New Jersey, 19 years old, dead February 2nd, 2017, at a Beta Theta Pi fraternity bid initiation party. List of injuries sustained throughout the night include a ruptured spleen, a fractured skull, traumatic brain damage. Cause of death, traumatic brain injury, excessive drinking. Blood alcohol content between 0.26 and 0.40. So tell me, how effective were they in keeping their brothers safe? So tell me, what was he trying to prove by consuming drinks until he was at 5 times the legal limit? What kind of environment are we creating when this is not a story that happens uncommonly? And therein displays the duality of the modern college fraternity, pretending to uphold significant traditional virtues of their founding fathers It's established decades or centuries ago. They're pretending to live up to this philanthropic nature of their roots, pretending to be constructing and fostering brotherhood within the future leaders of our society. But tell me, what are we actually doing? What are the true goals of the American fraternity? We see the stereotypes in the media all the time. Gym, tan, drink, sex, bro, fuck, bump, frat, chug, pump, no homo. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, man, who gives a shit? Are y'all even Greek? Is you? Since I began college in 2012, there have been 5 deaths of pledges from fraternities that were supported and watched over by their respective universities. That means at least once a year, a bright life is lost in an effort to prove themselves to their peers. Fraternities are problematic. The privileges in which they exuberate, borderline nepotism, and the means in which most fraternities will facilitate a sense of brotherhood involve the perpetuation of a vicious cycle of hazing and being hazed in order to prove how tough or manly or committed you are. A cycle of abuse that involves taking power away from those below you in order to inflate your own ego. But here's the thing. I myself have been a part of a Greek organization since my first year in 2013. I see the redeeming qualities of Greek life because I bought into the message. I bought into upholding myself to this idea of a Renaissance man. I used the message to learn to expect more out of myself. I used the opportunities I had to practice how I presented myself, how I socialized, and how I was able to connect with other people. So I won't call for the abolishment of the Greek life system. I see its merits, and I acknowledge that each chapter is unique to its own letters at its own university. But it's time we start asking ourselves tough questions. What are we trying to get out of this? Would I do this to my biological brother? What is our true purpose here? If you had to choose between abolishing your chapter's rituals or abolishing all use of alcohol and substance, which would you choose? Your answers can help you better direct your organization and the treatment of those around you. Question what you're doing, reflect upon the purpose, and break traditions when they are not supportive of your objectives. Question the system we belong to and ask yourself if the reputation we get as Greeks really is unjustified. Ask yourself if what we're doing really is creating brotherhood and building leaders, because we really can't afford to lose another life to such a toxic system of social hierarchy. So in memory of Timothy Piazza, Nolan Birch, Tucker Hips, Armando Villa, Michael Deng, let us redefine the modern fraternity and provide an environment where young, bright minds can develop and lead us into an even brighter future. Thank you.
One of the most beautiful pieces from the Vagina Monologues is entitled Because He Liked to Look at It, in which one woman tells the story of how her self-image changed when she had a good experience with a man. The man's name is Bob, and this is his story.
The 8 most terrifying words in the English language are, I want you to look at my vagina. It seems silly to say so, and a lot of you laughed when I said that, but I think this is true for most men. If you think about it, it's just human nature. We tend to fear what we don't understand. We don't do much to help boys or young men understand much of anything. We tell them to man up, give them access to hypersexualized images of women, and leave them to figure out on their own what it all means. Sex education for boys barely goes beyond the basics. No, you won't go blind if you do it by yourself. Wear a condom if you do it with someone else. None of my sex ed teachers ever explained to me just how to wear a condom. And none of them talked about the vagina in any more detail than to explain it was where the penis goes during sex. Well, my sophomore biology teacher told us to pay attention to the clitoris, but didn't tell us where to find it. I began to think of a woman's vagina as a sacred, mysterious place, like the cave on Dagobah, where Yoda sends young Skywalker to confront his fears.
In you must go.
It's in there.
Only what you take with you.
Drawn by the sacred mystery, but not yet ready to face the fear of the unknown, I became the kind of man who navigated by touch. I've always been as visually stimulated as the next man, but I loved exploring in the dark. Discovering the wonders of a woman with my fingertips, with my tongue, with the tip of my nose, with the hair on my chin. I loved finding my way inside of her by the way our bodies fit. I made love with my eyes closed, savoring my lover's touch, the feel of her skin against mine, reveling in the sounds of our breathing, of our skin slapping, of our passion building, of her passion rising as she loses control. If I ever opened my eyes, it was for a fleeting moment of intensity. But I would always retreat, collapsing away to hide behind my eyelids. I'll be honest, it always felt like there was something missing. And there was. Connection. Then, one day, I heard a woman suggest that the key to connecting deeply with any woman was to be fully and fearlessly present with her, to be in the moment with her, to get out of my head. I thought, but wait, I'm not in my head when I make love to a woman. I'm focused entirely on her pleasure, on whether I'm doing it right, on whether I'm doing it enough, on whether I'm doing it hard enough, on whether I'm doing it soft enough, on whether I'm going to make her come, on whether I'm going to come too soon, on trying not to come too soon, on baseball statistics, on the fact that I couldn't care less about baseball statistics unless I'm trying not to come too soon, on the realization that holy shit, I'm totally in my head. The woman talking about connection suggested that the place to start, the place to begin that deep connection, was to look at your lover's vagina, to really see it, to notice the shapes, the colors, the textures of your lover's vagina. She said to notice the relative locations of things and to describe what you see. To describe what I see. You mean I have to talk about it too? Turns out, really seeing a woman's vagina and then telling her what you see takes courage. Hearing you describe what you see takes courage too. Women definitely don't have the same relationship with their vaginas as we have with our dicks. And with all the conflicting things that society teaches us about the appearance of vaginas, a lot of women are pretty nervous about how they look. At first, I'd sneak a peek now and then, before sex, before we turned off the lights. Gradually, when I started really looking at my woman's vagina, it changed. From an unfathomable mystery to a place of grace and wonder. I found that vaginas are subtle and unique and lived in like a loving home. I noticed the layers, the folds, the curves. I discovered that I do know the difference between puce and mauve, salmon and coral.
Yeah.
I realized that the mystery of the vagina is the mystery of life itself. And then I understood that I could see my woman's vagina in a way that she'll never be able to, looking directly at it without a mirror. And that there, right there, was a place for us to connect. By telling her what I see, I could be the eyes through which she sees herself. And so, I began to speak. I told her of all that I saw in her vagina, of all that I saw in her. The more that I saw, the more she revealed to me. I'm not afraid anymore. I don't hide behind my eyelids. I look at my woman's vagina. And I'm no longer inside my own head. And we are connected. And together, we are open. Wide, wide open.
I do not like vaginas. This is a bold statement. I do not like them, but not in the same way that Republicans or certain football players don't. I do not like them because I'm gay. Hold for applause. And that is what makes me different from most men. It has taken me a long time, but I'm proud of who I am. And it is in this capacity as a gay man that I have come here to talk to you about a subject I know very much about. Women. What's that you say? A gay man talking about women? The nerve! What does this CC know about them? The fact of the matter is, I have many, many, many women friends. A lot of the significant relationships in my life are with women. Quite frankly, I've cuddled with, slept with, and have gone on more dates with women than men at this point that I'm surprised it hasn't taken hold. I mean, yes, like most misguided young men, I dabbled with heterosexuality. I had a girlfriend in high school during junior and part of senior year. She was very pretty, fair skin, thick dark glasses, great sense of humor. Pretty much still my type, except, you know, the dude version. It did not take long for things to escalate between us, hormones and all that. I remember the first time she showed me her breasts. I remember thinking, wow, there they are. They reminded me of Anne Hathaway's breasts. You know, in that scene where she was fooling around with Jake Gyllenhaal in Brokeback Mountain? I know, hashtag gay reference. The way the light hit them just right. Ang Lee had such a great use of light. Anyway. From that point, our physical activities remained pretty tame. In terms of baseball, we kept things pretty much around first or second base. That was always enough for her, and definitely more than I can handle. But when her first Valentine's Day rolled around, she started serving me those come hither eyes, accentuated by her naturally long eyelashes. And I quickly realized that the gift I got her from Build-A-Bear Workshop is not going to cut it. Next thing I know, we were in a dark room in our high school's photo lab. Things started pretty innocently. 2 outs, nobody on. I'm at bat, I hit the plate, and crack! I'm rounding first. And just when I was about to slow down at second, the third base coach is waving me in. And I mean, the crowd was cheering me on. What was I supposed to do? I can't disappoint the fans. So put me in, coach. I'm ready to play today. And I proceeded to slide into third. I felt like Jacques Cousteau in my cramped submersible, exploring a dangerous world of adventure. I was trying as hard as I could to enjoy the experience, to be into being in her. But alas, there was no ancient horizon of light and silence, no layers opening into more layers, opening into a plane of music and colors and calling connection. It was the very opposite of vaginal wonder. So why have I told you all of this? Because I want you to know that gay men have just as much a place in this movement as anyone. Just because we do not have sex with women doesn't mean that our relationships with or feelings toward them are any less loving or tender. The bond between a gay man and a straight woman is a special one, and it is rooted in the premise that gay men do not want to sleep with women and thus pose no threat. A lady friend of mine recently told me that she even hugs me differently from straight guys. even with hetero guys that I'm just friends with too, there is still this boundary that exists, and my guard is always up. I know I can be more free with you because you do not want any of this. And girl, how right she is. Which is one of the beautiful things about this connection. All the benefits of being with an amazing woman, and neither of us feels the desire to go down on the other. In fact, you could say that my dislike of vagina is what enables me to be the greatest ally for women. Huh, the more you know. But how can I be the greatest ally if I feel the systems of patriarchy infecting my own community? We cannot support a woman's right to autonomy over her body if we're grabbing her tits without permission. We cannot tell our girlfriends to love their bodies and work it if we ourselves are telling them that their pussies are disgusting. I think the way for gay men to continue to be fierce allies for our sisters is to call out misogyny in our own community every time we witness it. We cannot fight against toxic masculinity while still fetishizing it. We cannot say all are welcome while simultaneously disparaging the more feminine among us. We cannot call other men out when they propagate rape culture if we ourselves are joking around about how many beers it would take for a straight guy to come to his senses. I do not like vaginas. Yes, this is a bold statement. I do not like them, but I will use my male privilege to support their cry for equality. Because it is not enough for gay men to just be the greatest ally. We must talk the talk and walk the walk. To march with them in the streets, because who doesn't like a parade? We must lift them up and be willing to hold ourselves accountable to the highest standard.
My sanity and justify my actions. But I assume I'll never be able to convince anyone that this was the right decision. Maybe it's true that anyone who does this is insane by definition, but I can at least explain my reasoning. I considered not writing any of this because of how personal it is. But I like tying up loose ends, and I don't want people to wonder why I did this. Since I've never spoken to anyone about what happened to me, people would likely draw the wrong conclusions. Bill Zeller.
Do any of you know Bill Zeller? She asked. We all shook our heads. A surprising fact to me, since I think a good number of us are worldly men tuned into what's going on. After all, that's why we're supposed to be here. I'm expecting him to be a writer, artist, activist, politician, pundit, someone who will help us on this journey. Do you know Bill Zeller? She hands my friend his story and asked him to read. Bill, age 27, smart, funny, witty, a stone in the pond of the lives of people he met, dirty blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, winning smile. Losing hope, lost everything. Bill, age 27, computer programmer, drawn to a profession that required the utmost concentration. Late nights spent drinking Red Bull, programming binge marathons, losing himself in the lines of code. The binary language of ones and zeros, something that he could relate to. 1, being alone. 0, feeling nothing. Added on to himself, still alone, multiplied, still nothing. His entire career built on solitude and void, the only way to escape the darkness, if even for a little while. Darkness. Darkness. From the moment that Bill, age 4, was raped, his life was spent in darkness, unable to pull himself out. A child that fell down a well and couldn't cry out for help because he didn't know the words, so instead grew up in the darkness until he couldn't take it anymore. Bill was 27 when he took his own life. Bill, age 27, honors at Trinity, grad student at Princeton. Underground pizza connoisseur, baseball fan, awesome third baseman. Who knew that a comp sci geek would have such a good arm? Suicide. Suicide or just a self-inflicted euthanasia? Bill said that he had no one, that he had burned bridges, alienated people. Every relationship he had, a gruesome threesome with him, the girl, and the darkness. A polyamorous relationship where no one loved each other. Wait, that's a lie. There was one. He cared for her, and she for him. But he did not know how to let her love him, so he did the only thing that he knew, and she was put in an unnatural situation. A circumstance that neither of them deserved, the last real human connection that Bill would have. Bill dead at age 27. I'm not okay. Why couldn't he hold on and suffer hope a little while longer? I'm not okay. The feeling that though things are bad now, they will get better. I'm not okay. It has to get better, must get better, because why would we suffer the pain if there's no relief in the end? It is not okay that we live in a world where people feel this alone, this helpless, this empty. I'm shaken. I don't understand. Why did nobody see the signs? Why did nobody reach out to him? Why did he feel that he could only speak his full truth in death? He wrote, reproduce in its entirety, let people draw their own conclusions. A final declaration. A 4,000-word journey into a darkness that doesn't end in the light, it just ends. The only way to make sure he was fully understood. If you can't understand this decision, I hope you can at least forgive me. No. No. No! Forgive me, Bill, forgive me. I'm sorry for living in California and not being good at math, and not going to Princeton and not meeting you in a programming class and trying to be your friend, and not bonding over late night programming binges on Red Bull and underground pizzas, and not seeing the warning signs and reaching out to you, and not telling you that you are not alone, and not crying when I heard your story. Do any of you know Bill Zeller? She asked. No, none of us. But I do now. Bill, age 27, reproduce in its entirety, let people draw their own conclusions. A final declaration, a warning. A selfless act before a selfish act. A story of how the darkness of abuse can consume a life until it ultimately swallows it whole. But it doesn't have to be that way. I speak now to all of you trapped in the darkness. I know that you can't see me, but listen. Just listen to the sound of my voice. Hear it and follow it toward the light. However long it takes, I'll be here with you. You don't have to go through this alone. You will not go through this alone. The darkness doesn't deserve any more power over you. Just listen to my voice, to Bill's voice, to your friends and family's voices. We'll be there with you when you are ready to live in the light. Bill Zeller, age 27. Be at peace.
I'm Jesse. This story is from my life. Nathan was here, said my wife, Laurel. We had previously separated and were now tentatively trying to piece things together. Nathan, I asked. Nathan Berger. That was her mother's ex-husband who had sexually abused her when she was a child. Laurel hadn't seen him for 10 years. What happened, I asked. He raped me. Her words entered my chest like ice. I held her close. I'm so sorry. My mind raced as she dissolved into tears. I tried not to shake. She cried, and then she kissed me. Back before Laurel and I had separated, when I kissed her, the world melted a little, and I lost track of where I ended and she began. This was different. She felt like a splinter shoved under my skin, hard and alien. I tried not to let it show. I want you, she said. We need a rape kit done, I said. I already took a shower. Still, I need something else inside me. I wanted to take things slow. She looked bewildered and offended. Jesse, I need you. She put her hands up under my shirt. They were strange objects, not human. I recoiled slightly and felt guilty for it. Don't you love me? I love you. I just don't know how I love you. Jesse, I need you, she said. She put her hands down my pants. I felt the familiarity of her breath on my neck, heard her voice, sexy and slightly raspy. I felt myself getting hard in spite of myself. I felt guilty for not wanting her. I felt gross. We had sex anyway. She used to have this funky sense of humor. She would do something little, eat my food while I had my back turned or something, and then I'd ask her and she'd deny it. No, she'd say, totally deadpan. I didn't take your french fries. They were right here. No, they weren't. Yes, they were. You bought them. I didn't buy any french fries. There are french fries on your plate. No, there aren't. I can see them. Are you feeling okay, Jesse? Do you have a fever? Hilariously, despite my objections, she would never, ever crack. She never had any need for a rational justification. She gave me the freedom to act impulsively, to do things that made me happy instead of things that seemed like what I should be doing. I was drawn to the fact that I could never quite figure her out. Laurel was the first and at this point the only person I had ever had sex with. Sex was good when we started, but after we got married and moved to be with her family in Pennsylvania, things changed. After that, she often said I wasn't manly enough or that I wasn't aggressive enough. If she didn't come at least 8 times, she wasn't satisfied. She'd curl up on the other side of the bed and scoff and sigh. After 9 months of marriage, she kicked me out and I was 20 years old, alone in rural Pennsylvania. My brother moved in with me, her new boyfriend moved in with her. 4 months after that, she moved into my new house. I'd hoped to stay in separate rooms and to take things slowly. About a month into that, she started saying her ex-stepfather was coming around. I was all adrenaline all the time after that. Almost every day, Laurel told me that he had seen her or hit her or threatened her or raped her. She said he was watching the house. I had never seen him, nor had my brother, nor had any of the neighbors. I knew rationally she was probably lying or having some kind of delusion, but the consequences of not believing her if she was telling the truth seemed worse than the consequences of believing her if she was lying. When she was at work, my brother and I would discuss what we were going to do and whether to believe her. I tried sometimes to tell her I didn't want to sleep in the same bed. Sometimes she would say something like, "It's fine, I just don't know what to do. Everything is going wrong and I don't even have you. I'm out here all alone, my mom hates me, she won't talk to me, my whole family won't talk to me, all I have is you. But I can't have you." If I didn't have sex with her, she would end up suicidal or she would leave the house and claim that her stepfather had found her and threatened her or hit her or raped her. So I had sex with her. I tried to make my body an object running through a series of programmed motions to get her off. Afterward, I'd scoot away from her in my small bed and fall asleep. Afterward, I'd scoot away from her and try to sink as far as I could into the mattress. She would interrupt me, scoot over close in my small bed and fall asleep. I wanted to leave, to check in with myself, to breathe, but I knew she would know and her response could be suicidal. So I went to sleep. I was putting off the emotions that I would spend the next several years trying to deal with. After over a month of that, one day she didn't come home. She didn't answer her phone. I opened her laptop. Her Facebook was open and there were messages to her ex. In the messages, she accused me of not allowing her to leave the house, said I was controlling and manipulative, and said I was abusing her. They had also agreed to meet up and have sex. I put her shit out front and I locked the door. She came back the next day and said she had been at a friend's house. I told her she couldn't come in. She said she was going to kill herself. I called the cops. She left. She said bye to the kids and left with the police. I filed for full custody. She found out. She told me I wasn't allowed to take the kids home to San Diego for the holidays. We left that very day. It felt like a spy movie when my mom, who flew out to save me, drove us to the airport to take us home. I cried a lot when I got back. I slept a lot. I watched my parents play with my kids. I cried some more. Everything was falling apart. I had the holidays to stay in San Diego, then I had to return to Pittsburgh to wait for a court date. I reached out to friends I had known when I lived in San Diego. Most of them were helpful, but they didn't understand. My friend Erica didn't understand either, but she had a presence. She would stay with me, listening intently and patiently. She never got overwhelmed. We started hanging out a bunch. I knew Erica from high school. Back then we had almost had a thing. I went to her house a few times and we'd sit in her room watching TV, just barely touching arms as we lay on our backs, neither one of us making a move. When I got together with Laurel, she and Erica became friends. Erica was even her maid of honor. After I told Erica about Laurel cheating on me and everything else, Erica stopped speaking to her. Erica said I should come to a party she was having to get my mind off Laurel. We were all drinking a bit. Me and Erica ended up making out in a back room. It was so weird. It was also really good. Like, really good. To get some affection with no demand behind it, no manipulative intent, was so strange. I felt a heat inside my chest. I went home, and over the next few days we texted and she just suggested that we have sex. I was freaking out. First of all, I hadn't dated since age 17 and I had no idea what the rules were. On top of that, I didn't know if it was too soon. I'd never had sex with anyone else. I had also developed some serious suspicions of anyone claiming to enjoy my affection. Like, really, what the fuck did she want from me? If I had sex with her, what were my obligations? On the other hand, I was fucking stoked. My suspicions were allayed by having known her for 8 years, and holy shit, it felt good to have someone who seemed genuinely interested in having sex with me. Finally, a few days before my flight back to Pittsburgh, I decided I would take her up on the offer. It was around midnight. I texted her that we should have sex. She said okay, but she was at a party out in El Cajon. Should we do it tonight? Yeah. Unfortunately, both of us were staying with parents, so we had no convenient place to do it. So I grabbed some blankets and threw them in the back of my parents' 2002 Honda Odyssey, which is a minivan, and headed on my way. Conveniently, the very back seats in a Honda Odyssey can fold down so you get a really solid amount of flat carpeted area back there. So as terrible as it sounds to have sex in your parents' minivan, what's up, Dad? If you're gonna have sex in a vehicle, the Honda Odyssey is kind of where it's at. I pulled up into a dark and empty cul-de-sac in El Cajon somewhere, and I texted her.
When you've been through all this.
I pulled up into a dark and empty cul-de-sac in El Cajon somewhere, and I texted her. She asked if I had a condom. I said yeah. She came out. I'm sure there was a short and awkward conversation in there somewhere, but soon we were making out in the back of the minivan and taking each other's clothes off. She was smiling at me. When she looked at me, she was really seeing me. I wasn't her fuckstick. I didn't exist for her service. I felt her fingers on my chest, and they were full of affection and curiosity and caring. She pulled down my pants and went down on me, and she liked it. She liked it. Turning me on turned her on. She looked up at me. She asked me if I was okay. I said, yeah. She said, what's up? I said, you're just, what? I don't know. What? You want me to feel good. She looked at me. Of course I want you to feel good. I wasn't used to that. She put the condom on and put me inside her. I took in the moment, the feel of her skin, the feeling of being inside her, the moonlight across her naked body, her curly hair, her little moans, the way she would touch my face and look at me. I was going to take this moment and keep it forever. Afterwards, we lay in the back of the minivan in the dark, warm under the blankets. I could see stars up outside the window. When she spoke, her voice washed over me and warmed me. That warmth helped sustain me for the next 6 months. Erica became the person I called at 1 a.m. in a snowstorm screaming off a bridge. And every time Laurel tried to seduce me, which was often, I resisted. I remembered that there was something better, that there was something that felt real and good and right. And I made it. 4 years later, I have full custody of my kids, and I live in San Diego. I'm not saying I needed a night with Erica in a Honda Odyssey to get there, but it helped.
We hope that all these stories you've heard tonight resonate with you in some way, shape, or form, and echo the joys and upbringings, the trials and tribulations, and the courage and resilience of many lives and stories across space and time. But when we live in a society where 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men will be sexually assaulted during their lifetime, we have to come together, work together, and fight together. We have to take a stand against sexual assault. So, with our cast and crew, we stand in solidarity with all those affected by sexual and relationship violence. We hope you will rise with us. We will continue with 3 statements. If any of these statements resonate with you in any way, please feel free to stand, but feel free to abstain if you don't feel comfortable. At this time, if you have personally experienced sexual assault or any type of gender-based violence, please rise. At this time, if you know someone who has experienced sexual assault or any type of gender-based violence, please rise.
If you agree to stand in solidarity with those who have experienced gender-based violence, please rise now. Everyone here may know someone that has experienced gender-based violence. You may just not be aware of who they are. We thank you all so much for your courage. And so with this, we present to you the final piece of this year's Mending Monologues. Be seated.
I'm sitting at dinner on one of my first dates with my girlfriend, Nicole. She walks off to the bathroom as our waiter gladly hands me the check. I more than gladly front the bill because actually I'm not sure why. The guy is supposed to pay on the first date. At least that's what I thought. At least that's what I was taught. Be a gentleman, take charge, be a man, and pay for the bill. It's your masculine responsibility.
My responsibility as a man? In what book does it list responsibilities that are bestowed unto all men at birth? Why is this weird authority over currency being exchanged for food placed on men?
Paying for the bill is an expectation for all men on dates.
What? So you think she can't pay for herself?
Alright, fine, I won't pay for the bill.
Wow, what a gentleman.
How do we navigate the enigma of who pays for the bill?
I'll pay for coffee on a first date, but maybe not dinner at an expensive restaurant. I like to ask, I like to switch it up. Back and forth. I'll pay, you pay. Bottom line, it's about what feels right for both individuals.
Bruh, it's the 21st century. Respect the other person, practice open communication, and just be prepared to adjust. If I invite someone out, it's a matter of hospitality, not chivalry, when I offer to pay the bill. If the person wants to pay their own, or even pay mine, it's fine.
I pay for myself. However, when it's beyond the initial phases of getting together and a friendship or a relationship isn't further established, it usually ends up being whoever takes out their wallet first, with the trust that over time, as the relationship has developed, we end up spending more and more time together and leading to a natural balance in our tabs. And I like it like that.
Say I'm on a date with a guy. Do we both have this obligation to please tap at our armor and put at a battle to death as to who pays?
Now what if I'm on a date with the girl? Do either of us pay? Do we just run away?
The rules that I've been trying to unlearn became strikingly clear when I went on a date with a woman for the first time. Both my date and I had only ever had romantic and sexual experiences with men until then. At the end of our date, when the check finally came, both said we could pay. We then discussed how, unlike many other times in the past, each of our offers to pay the bill were completely genuine, with no underlying fears or expectations.
People should negotiate paying the bill however the fuck they want to.
Right now, I don't really know who pays. Because that question is so rooted in gender and all of its sexist origins are constantly spilling out on Tinder dates, Coffee Meets Bagel, ChristianMingle.com. Take the pot and fill it to the brim with the questionable bills that have been paid throughout the ages, and it all boils down to one word.
Chivalry. The middle-aged roots of chivalry defined what a man should be in modern day.
Chivalry in its denotative definition is technically dead. Unless you're a knight. If not. If it's used today, who benefits from its use? Who suffers?
Chivalry. Huh. What does that even mean? Well, let's start with something solid. Chivalry is defined by dictionary.com as the sum of the ideal qualifications of a knight, including courtesy, generosity, valor, and dexterity in arms. On the other hand, it's defined by urbandictionary.com as something that people always say is dead, but no one seems to know what the hell that.
Well, technically, chivalry was never alive for me since we didn't have knights in our culture. It's not until I was more exposed to European American culture that I started grasping the true meaning of chivalry. It seems to me it's gentleman-like, but slightly more brave.
As a gay man, I personally find the term obsolete. My partner would be male. In my relationship, chivalry implies that one partner needs to play a masculine, dominating role in taking care of the other. I'm not feeling that. I believe that both partners should take care of and support each other equally, regardless of gender. I think there's a better word for that. Respect.
I would never describe myself, a woman, as chivalrous, and I open the door for people all the time. If chivalry truly means respect, would you describe someone who isn't a man as chivalrous?
Chivalry shouldn't even exist, because men should be treating women the same way they treat men, with respect.
The tree of chivalry has such sexist roots that we must weed out. Let's pull out the toxicity of male dominance and female passivity.
The destructive nature behind seeing gender as a two-sided endeavor.
The need for men to be protectors, the catcalling, the entitlement.
Let's plant a new seed. Because the values of chivalry are important, universal, and are reserved not only for men, but for all genders. Seeds of change that sprout foundations of
Respect.
Sympathy. Common courtesy.
Human interaction.
Random acts of kindness.
Compromise.
Let's take it upon ourselves to protect each other and liberate each other.
From the bounds of gender roles.
From the chains of those that silence us. The world is in a constant state of organized chaos, always changing.
Gender and sexuality are evolving, and we as a people must co-evolve with it. Let's uproot the misogynistic essence of chivalry and let it give way to new understandings.
Let's plant new, redefining seeds. Seeds of change. Seeds of revolution that sprout roots of love and grow to become trees of healing. We want to say thank you for taking this journey with us. It's been a great 2 hours. We can't thank you enough. We want to direct you to the resources in the back. Karen Sark, the Women's Center at UCSD, San Diego Center for Community Solutions. They're all resources for you to utilize if you need it. We are also here after the show if you need anyone to talk to.
In addition, we hope that there are stories that you've heard today that have resonated with you and will inspire healthy conversations. By all means, are none of these stories all-inclusive, so please understand that, and we hope that you take something from the show and learn something. Thank you. Have a good night.